It has been a story that we have been following former Google engineer James Damore. He was fired after writing a memo that slams the company as an ideological echo chamber. He has now filed a class action lawsuit claiming the tech giant discriminates against conservatives and white men. James Damore joins us now, along with civil rights attorney Harmeet Dhillon. Thanks to both of you for coming on this morning and telling your story.
Happy to be here.
Thanks a lot.
So, James, in your lawsuit, you allege what about discrimination?
So I went to several diversity programs, and they all told me the same thing, that they are actually taking race and gender into account when they're hiring, which is illegal.
And that is serving to benefit women and non-conservatives and non-whites?
And non-Asians.
And what is your evidence of this? I will turn to your attorney here in a minute, but what is the evidence that you are laying out to prove your case that Google is discriminating against white male conservatives?
So, Sandra, there are women included in the case as well. If they're conservative and they're women, they can be plaintiffs in this case. The evidence is throughout our very lengthy and detailed complaint. It's 161 pages long, and it includes a number of screenshots from managers at Google who talk about men and white people being toxic and toxic masculinity, et cetera. We have an anecdote in there about two very senior female managers at Google leading an all-hands meeting at which business units that had not enough women in them were booed. And, there are other incidents of harassment. And Google maintains blacklists among various managers of people who are conservative, people who voted for the president. And they also threaten to blacklist people throughout Silicon Valley if their views don't conform with the very extreme left-wing views of some of those managers. So we have a lot of evidence.
Google's responded with a pretty general statement on all of this, on your lawsuit, James, saying, quote, "We look forward to defending against Mr. Damore's lawsuit in court." I must point out that Google disproportionately employs males. When you look at the global environment, 69% of Google's workforce is male. 56% of domestic employees are white. Doesn't that work against your case, James?
If I can jump in and then James can add, but the fact that they don't have those numbers are not relevant. The numbers that are relevant are how are they getting to 50-50? Those are their goals. And if they're using quotas, that's not legal. If they're using recruiting and other ways to do it, as James has pointed out in some other interviews, only 20% of the engineers out of software school these days in the United States are women. So if you want 50-50, you're going to have to do that with some very aggressive efforts.
James, some people responded, and I'm sure you can weigh in on all the response you're getting and to continue to get on this, which I'm sure is a lot. But the initial letter that you wrote while you were still employed by the company, which then you were fired for writing, you talked about the alienation of conservatives at the company, but you also blamed biological differences for the relative lack of women in technology. As a result, you don't have to look far to find people who are saying you're against women and don't think that they're as good as men in the technology workplace.
No, I never say that women are worse at all. Actually, they are just as good. It's just that fewer women tend to be interested in technology, which leads to men and women choosing different things for their career. And I actually lay out several ways in which we can make the workplace more welcoming for women to actually increase the gender diversity at Google without illegal discrimination.
What is the response that you're getting today to all of this?
It's really a mix of just blind hate and a lot of support, though, because this isn't just happening at Google. This is in many workplaces. People can really empathize with this just shutting down of conservative thought and illegal discrimination.
Were you surprised at the initial reaction from Google to fire you for writing this letter?
Yeah, I was very surprised, actually, because if you read it, it's clear that I was trying to help Google, and they just wouldn't have any of it, and they just smeared me and fired me.
Well, clearly, Harmeet, you've taken him on as a client. You believe he has a case. Do you believe he can win?
Yes, I do. I don't take cases that I don't think have merit, and it's not just James. There are dozens of other people's stories included in our lawsuit. I've gotten overwhelming response since the Monday when we filed it. A lot of people are calling us to join the lawsuit, including a lot of people who were interviewed for jobs but didn't get jobs at Google because of their gender, their race, or their political viewpoint. And this is a much bigger issue than just Google. It's throughout Silicon Valley.
All right. Thanks to both of you for coming on, Harmeet and James, for telling your story. We'll have more in just a moment.